Hey guys, in last 2 weeks I managed to tackle 4 of my exams, but I still got 2 more to go. But with a bit of gap in between, I thought this would be a perfect time to share something valuable. Today I'm gonna talk about how I managed to cover large volume of material in a very short period of time. Well, I'm not encouraging anyone to leave things for the last minute before the exam, but knowing how to cover it can be very beneficial, even lifesaver, especially when you're under pressure. If you don't know me, I'm Zahid, a fourth year medical student studying abroad in Bulgaria. So let's get right into it. So the first step is getting the bigger picture. So let's say I have a subject X for the upcoming exam. What I would do and what I actually did is skimming through the topics, skim through all the topics, not go into the details, but having the general idea how the flow of the subject is, how each topic connects, and how knowing one area can lead to a better understanding for the next. So I'll take my subject neurology as an example. So here I'll explain how I mapped out my plan for neurology while skimming through the topics. So we have two parts in neurology, general neurology and the clinical neurology. So let me explain it in a simpler way. Neurology, we have two parts. So in general neurology, I had the anatomy and physiology of brain. So in simpler words, the structure and the function of brain. And in clinical aspect, there were the problems. Let's say there's a specific problem in a structure, so how it's affecting the structure and the function regarding that structure. So in my case, I had to block more time for general neurology because it's been more than a year me studying neuroanatomy. And for clinical, I can actually back it up with pathoanatomy, pathophysiology, like pathology, microbiology, and pharmacology, because those things are very related. And the interesting thing in medicine is each and every subject is very related. Like when you map it out, it's kind of connecting dots. Every dot can be connected with the other one. So let's say you have some problem in brain or heart or lung or maybe in the kidney. Anything and everything can affect everything. Primarily, you have the problem very localized, but later it spreads and affects the nearby and the related organs. So actually in clinical part, whatever it is, neurology or any other internal med subject, the clinical part is very related. The diagnosis, you use your radiological knowledge, the treatment, pharmacology, and the clinical features and how disease progress from pathology. It's that simple. Actually, it's not, but to map it out, it's that simple. So let me draw it here. Let's say this is our beautiful brain, the structure, blah, blah, blah. And then here, we got something. What is this? This is the neural pathway. Let's say this is our hand and this is down there, the leg. So understanding this is like understanding the anatomy and physiology, how it works and how we are getting the stimulation in our hand and our brain is perceiving if it's a danger or it's safe, like a light touch or a danger, someone is grasping you. Let's keep it as simple as this. So in clinical, what we learn is affecting in this part specifically how the problem is gonna arise. Making things simpler, if there is a problem here, it's gonna affect this part of the body. So let's say the nerve is supplying from here, so it's gonna affect the lower part of the hand, and if it's affecting somewhere here, it's gonna affect the whole hand, or maybe if it's here, it's gonna affect the whole body. So in my case, I had to focus more in general than clinical. And of course, it makes sense when you have a better foundation, the details gonna make sense. Which leads us to the second point, which is filtering information or thinking like the examiner. What are the high yield topics which can most probably show up in the exam? Well, that's very tricky in medicine because everything seems very important and must cover thing. When you are under serious time constraints, you have to be strategic. The problem with me is perfectionism. I try to be very perfect in one topic and then jump into the other one. But when exam is nearby, it's not a perfect scenario for me being perfect. Maybe if I start from the beginning of the semester, I can be perfect and learn things according to my way. But before the exam, you have to behave accordingly, let's say. You have to be a good kid. So those moments are not actually the time to be perfect, other than getting things done. For neurology, the general and clinical part, there are topics that you can really dive in. But knowing the high yield topics, filtering the information, and thinking from examiner's perspective, what are most likely to come up, can really shape you up better for the preparation. So, for example, let's say Parkinson disease, the great fighter, Muhammad Ali, for example. So, he had the Parkinson disease. If you have Parkinson disease, what does it mean? The dopamine is less produced in your body. Where is dopamine produced in your brain? Which part exactly? Generally, you have to know that. Very high yield. If you have Parkinson disease, what are the clinical features? How do you diagnose this disease? What are the treatments? Those are very high yield. You can't miss those. You have to know these, revise these more than the low yield topics. I understand subjects like neurology, it's packed with all the important concepts, but there are some ways to filter information, like the high order information and the low order information. You do the high order information more, repeat it more, then the low order information, you skim through it, you have an understanding, that's all, okay? Because exam is nearby. Which brings us to the last point, which is active recall. When I first got exposed to the idea of active recall, it seemed very fancy to me because you have to use the flashcards, you use the app Anki, and then you do this, you do that, very technical. Then I kind of ignored it, but later on, eventually I realized that's the way I've been implying on myself to remember things. So what is active recall? Active recall is simply you retrieving information from your memory other than passively rereading it or maybe seeing your notebook, seeing a video. Like you passively read or see a video and then you close your book or close the tab and then you force yourself to summarize the topic which you just did or maybe explain it to your friend. That's actively recalling it. It can be very simple as you reciting the topic you just did, summarizing it to yourself or explaining it, teaching it to your friend. Like this is the way I used to do and still I do it. I don't use those flashcards and things, but it's on you how you want to use it, how you want to actively recall the information that you just learned. You want to test yourself, and by testing, you actually store the information in a better, strong way in your brain. It's very interesting. I'm talking about active recall right now. Guess what? Neurology. We are talking about brain here. In our brain, there's a specific structure called hippocampus, which helps us in formation of memory and learning. So when we actively recall, we activate the hippocampus. So we convert our short-term memory to long-term memory. So actively recall is the way for a student to convert short-term memory to long-term memory by challenging yourself, so you can actively push yourself and test how much you actually remember. Like just reading, rereading, and rewatching the videos, those are passive way of learning. In the end, if you want a solid foundation, like basement of your memory, you have to actively recall. So those are the 3 points. To wrap it up, these strategies aren't just for getting through the materials, but also mastering it by focusing on getting the bigger picture, knowing the high yield topics, filtering information, and actively recalling what you've just learned. You can literally master anything, and you can cover any amount of volume in a very less period of time. It worked for me, and I'm very confident it will work for you guys, whoever is watching me right now. And I would love to know, what is your go-to strategy on studying when time is running out? And if you find this content helpful, don't forget to engage by liking and subscribing, and see you next time. Till then, keep pushing forward.